Welcome to our open conversation here in the European House in Belgrade. It's a pleasure that we have this opportunity. The title is Academic Freedom Under Pressure, something that, that concerns to some degree European and also Serbian academic life here in particular. The subtitle is a professor's perspective. So we are academic teachers, we are researchers, but we are also intellectuals, and if we want or not, we influence the public debate either by participating or not participating into debates. One part of the title is Under Pressure. And I think I mentioned it, and following the last year here in Serbian academia and university life in Belgrade in particular, there is various ways of academia that got under pressure, direct, indirect ways, and the question is how to react. And I think for the European experience and also for the Circle U experience, is there something that we can take as lessons or something that we can learn from your hitherto experiences? So the discussion in the program examines the opportunities, but also the risks of public engagement. And this session also examines real experiences of censorship, self-censorship, external interference, and considers how academics can navigate these challenges while maintaining credibility and resilience. Let me introduce the participants. We are prominently on the panel here. Professor Ivanka Popovic, the former rector of the University of Belgrade and current vice president of the European University Association. Professor Nemanja Đuverović, professor at the Faculty of Political Sciences here at the University of Belgrade. We have Professor Heike Vitas from the Department of History of Humboldt University, Professor Anne-Lise Sibony, Faculty of Law of University of Louvain, Alexander Knežević, a research associate at the Institute of Philosophy and Social Theory at the University of Belgrade, and me as the moderator, I'm Hannes Granditz. I'm professor for history at the Humboldt University, and for decades, we have various ways of collaboration also with Belgrade University, and currently also a joint master program where we are partners there. So the format of the Circle U open conversation, to those who experience some, is known, but for others, just a short reminder. We have just 60 minutes. We have the on-site discussion here, but the open conversation will be also live streamed online into the 9 partner university of Circle U. Just a short reminder: Aarhus, HU Berlin, King's College, University Paris, here Belgrade, Louvain, Vienna, Pisa, and Oslo. So interested people from these universities can also and will participate online. The procedure is, as we agreed here, we will have intro statements by our 3 Belgrade colleagues, about 5 to 7 minutes. Then we have responses or additional inputs by Heike Vitas and Anne-Lise Sibony. Then we have a round here on the panel to comment each other. Then we will open up for questions and comments from the audience here in the room, but also it's also possible if you are online here at the open conversation, you can pose your question into the chat and we can then also take it into the discussion. I think this is it, what I wanted to introduce, and then I would hand over to Professor Popovic to the first input.
Thank you very much, Professor. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. And if I may, as one of the rectors who were in the founding group of Circle U, I can say that when we were selecting themes for our alliance and for the projects that ensued, I somehow thought we would be discussing and fine-tuning aspects of democracy. I really didn't expect that it would maybe be the hot topic of the Circle U Alliance, although the other two topics of global health and climate are equally important. But I think it was very brave of Circle U to take on such challenging issues, and that just shows the strength of our alliance. In that respect, as we know, all universities are based fundamentally on academic freedom and on university autonomy. And these are the basic values from which we start, the premise which allows us to be a voice in society and also to fulfill the third mission of universities. So I think it's very much expected that academics engage socially regarding themes and topics that are important in a society. So we are there, we are engaged. But of course, some issues become hotter than others, and some issues cause even divisions in society. And when these divisions are extreme, then we are moving from social dialogue to actually political articulations. And that's when the university finds itself in a bit of a balance of how to maintain its academic position and not engaging in daily politics, but contributing to the discussion. It's not an easy thing to do. And that's why I think our early career researchers need to be made aware that, from the moment they step into academia, they have to have also this aspect in their mind when they speak publicly, but also in the classroom. When these issues become truly divisive, then of course, then we are talking not only about opportunities, but about risks that are related with academic freedom. And in that sense, the, let's say, surroundings in which a university operates become very important to what and how academics can respond. When I talk about an environment, I'm talking about whether you have a stable situation of rule of law, whether you have media that operate in a normal fashion. I mean, there is no truly free media anywhere, but still, where at least you have a balanced situation with the media. And then in such circumstances, you know that your voice will be then heard by various people who will then form their own opinions. Unfortunately, we do not have this kind of a situation in Serbia. We have a deeply divided society, but we do not have rule of law and we do not have free media, which makes things extremely complicated. Also, the whole situation is exacerbated by the systemic corruption that exists in this country, and I can say it's only symbolically portrayed by the tragedy in Novi Sad that we will now on Saturday, it will be 1 year since this tragedy happened. And of course the student response to this, and I think the response was not only to Novi Sad, but generally to the situation that all of Serbian society has found itself in. So when we move just from looking at academia as a community, and then when you look at academics as individuals, there's also the specific situation of those who find themselves in university leadership. Academic leadership is in such divisive times it put at the forefront because they are representing the university, the institution, and in that respect, for them, it's impossible to divide what is personal research, what is activism, they are seeing, what they say is the voice of the institution, not the voice of the individual. No matter what kind of a disclaimer you put on it, it will always be the voice of the institution. And then I have to mention one of the key words from the presentation when it was offered here for our discussion today. This is auto-censorship. I think people in university leadership are really faced with dilemmas of auto-censorship. Where is the border? How far can I go with what I say, not to be accused of being a political actor rather than an academician? So this is an important issue. It doesn't affect that many people in academia, but it's important for the position of the institution. Also, in institutions in societies with autocratic tendencies, there are real threats of censorship and external interference. So I think, again, this depends on circumstances, but what I can say that we here in Serbia are definitely feeling that government-controlled media do not report about the protests or any other socially relevant issues objectively. So therefore, it's very difficult for the public to form a balanced opinion and really have their own opinion, but their opinion is shaped by these media. And the second problem is that the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Research and Technological Development have responded in a way that they have actually curbed funding. They're prolonging, delaying payment of certain costs for material needs of the universities. As you know, there was this absurd ruling about how salaries of academics are divided into teaching and research, and where now we have that only 15%, 1/5 of the time of academics is devoted to research, the rest to teaching. Because we have had the blockades, then of course there's no teaching, so no salary. So, okay, this is now, for the moment, the blockades have stopped, but this regulation has not been withdrawn. It's still hanging there in the air and can be brought back into force at any time when the ministry, or generally the government, finds this necessary. So, I think this is what we really call external interference into university autonomy and academic freedom. So when we talk about the boundaries between academic work, personal expression, and political activism, actually I would say at the moment, at least in Serbia, but I would be really curious to hear about other countries, is that it's left to the individual to decide where these boundaries are. And at the moment in Serbia, they are very blurred. What could help? And there's no magic wand, no easy solution to this. But you know, many universities have in place certain strategies for crisis management. This is also a crisis that requires the university to be ready and prepared. In no other words, you know, each member of the academic community needs to think about, at least in theory, if not in practice, how they will respond in a situation like this. Because if I go back to my initial statement that there are expectations that people from academia should respond to the needs of society, to be active in social dialogue, there is then the other side, and that is what sacrifice are you willing to take in order to stand up for these ideals and for these positions that you take. So I would say that academic integrity also comes into play, very much so, and what Professor said about people who take a position and people who willfully do not take a position, because that means when we have all of these things in place, members of the academic community need to be willing and able to take the consequences of the positions that they take. And this is not easy, and the pressure is considerable, and each individual is made up of various aspects. One is the professional life, other is the personal life. And when you put all of this together, no decision is easy, and any decision that maintains academic integrity and defends the institution is one that should be respected. And I think this is what we need to talk about more and more, because maybe in other countries these threats to the university will not be as obvious as they are in Serbia. But surely things are challenging European, there are issues that are challenging European society, they are challenging European universities, and universities need to be ready for the challenge. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation. This is my third open conversation, and I always feel very welcome and kind of pleasant talking about issues that kind of tackles us all. And Ivanka may have been a rector when they decided to introduce democracy as one of the pillars, but then she and my colleague from University of Belgrade hired me as academic chair for democracy to do that. So I thought it would be the easier job than it actually is. So. But having said that, I kind of noticed that when we are talking from the Serbian perspective, we often have this, not free miscommunication, but it's hard for our colleagues from the West to understand what we mean by academic freedoms and attack on academic freedom here in Serbia. So I might use my 5 or 7 minutes to kind of elaborate more from a perspective from someone who comes from this kind of region or this country. And I think I have kind of 3 main points about academic freedoms here in Serbia. The first one is actually that context always matters. And I think it really matters when we talk about academic freedoms if you come from democratic or undemocratic society. I don't know how much people in the audience know, but Serbia is not democracy anymore. It's labeled as a hybrid regime, so one of few in Europe, and it's slowly and steadily going towards full-fledged autocracy. So this is, I think, a very important context because the kind of the problems and challenges that we are facing here are not the same as challenges that you might face in Austria or Norway or Belgium, wherever we are. And I would do now something that I usually don't do, but just to give you an example from my personal kind of short auto-ethnographic tour, just what happened to me in the last year and a half, for example. So, for example, in the last year and a half, I have been called by one of the ministers, the government is a foreign spy. He or she asked my management faculty to be sanctioned for that. There have been in the tabloids texts about me funneling my research money to fund the Colored Revolution, the favorite team of our government. I have experienced that in the nearby of my faculty, there have been leaflets about me and some lies have been distributed. My TA has been followed and threatened, and the list goes on and on. And this is not even, I don't think it's even the worst case. Everything that happens to me, you can multiply by 100, and then that will not even be close enough to show what, for example, people who are much more vocal, like Professor Popovic, actually experiencing. So I think it's very important to understand that context does matter, and when we are talking about academic freedoms in different parts of Europe, it really kind of, the issues are different. And one more thing is actually what Ivanka actually mentioned, that in a highly polarized society like Serbian one, it's very hard also to have a public stand because it's always, every issue is a battlefield and you always need to be pro or against. There is no middle ground that we academics most likely like to take. And then you always need to find yourself justifying for the position that you're taking towards one or the other. So I think that's something that is very, very hard position to be in because somehow you're always navigating, and then there comes to that what the issue that has been mentioned, the self-censorship, that you try to tone yourself down because you think that you need to be on one side or the other because there is no middle ground. The second point is actually strategies, how we kind of cope with this, I would not say abnormal situation here. And I've noticed two, broadly speaking, two strategies. I call them ivory tower and revolutionary. So ivory tower would be someone who is actually, like decided not to take any more public stand, decided to do just his or her research, to publish, to cooperate mostly people from abroad because that kind of makes situation much more easier because there are no kind of situation here. So just to kind of keep your head above the water and then try to do your job, right? So no political, no public engagement whatsoever. And then on the other side, you have something that we can call revolutionary, that people who are aggravated by this kind of situation here, and then they take a vocal and very public stand on the issues. They are much more active than they usually would be. They want their voice to be heard. They want to have influence on a public debate. They want to have some kind of impact on policies. So they are much more engaged than they would probably be in a normal situation because these kind of situations lead you to be more engaged. And then I think I see some people in the audience and here who actually take very, very public stand. And then, of course, there are repercussions for them because they're taking this stand. And I think this is very brave of them because they're doing this. And the third point that I would like to make is actually that, unfortunately, in this battle here, I think that I don't know if my colleagues here would agree, but I think we are mostly alone in this battle. And why I say that? Globally, I think academic freedoms, 2025 hasn't been the best year for academic freedoms, let's be honest, right? We have seen in other parts of the world as well. If we see in the United States, we see that people have been sanctioned, penalized, universities lost in hundreds of millions of dollars. Nobody is actually willing to talk about important issues like Gaza or internal US policies because they're afraid they're going to be personal repercussions on them. In Europe, that maybe it's not so drastic, but let's not forget that in Europe we are experiencing similar situation. We have countries where the whole departments of field of studies have been canceled. We have countries where some foreign universities have been expelled. There had been also pressures because of Gaza. So I think in Europe as well, academic freedom has been under attack, although not so much as in US. And then you come to the countries of Serbia, which is a small country in the periphery in Europe, that has very challenging relationship with the West and the EU on many issues. The last would be probably on the war in Ukraine. So the whole relationship is already strained. And then you have this issue that somehow is not in the center of the attention, rightfully or not rightfully, we can argue, we can debate about that, right? But it is very much as a student protest. I think this is a battle that we need to win by ourselves, including everything what Ivanka was talking about. And it's a kind of uphill battle, but unfortunately I have to say that it is a battle that we need to win by ourselves in this case. And I'm going to stop here and then to have more time for discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. I am a doctoral student at the Faculty of Philosophy at the Anthropology Department, but previously I did my bachelor's and master's in philosophy. So I tend to be very philosophical about these kinds of topics, which usually leads me to asking a more general, more abstract conceptual questions. And also an important thing to say is that I'm a philosopher of science. So I very much read about the relationship between science and society. And in this very big field of knowledge, there is also a very important literature on the relationship between academic freedom and social responsibility. And I was also influenced very much by these feminists and emancipatory philosophers of science who talk about the value-ladeness of knowledge and not about the value neutrality of knowledge. And all this perspective led me to ask the question of what is precisely the role of universities in democratic societies. And also when we think about the differences between public engagement, political activism, and academic work and scientific research, it seems to me that somehow we see that there is a division of labor. So when we as academics enter the public arena, then we are allowed to have our personal expression or to maybe become more active, publicly engaged, and to share our personal interests, values, political affiliations, and so on and so forth. And somehow when we return to our universities and to our labs and to our offices, now we should act as researchers, as academics, which means that we should somehow set aside our political interests and values in order to retain this academic integrity, scientific objectivity, and so on and so forth. And I think that maybe this is a false dilemma, and this is also somehow connected to this distinction between ivory tower and revolutionary academics. And I believe that the revolutionary academics also belong to the ivory tower, and when I think about this, I think there is like a conceptual, we have to be more clear. So, and I don't want to bother you with the technical terms and jargon, but I believe that maybe you're familiar with this so-called context of justification, which is basically the context in which we do our scientific research. And in this context, we also should be political, I believe. This doesn't mean that we will sacrifice our scientific integrity, objectivity, but that means that we are more transparent about our political values when we do science. So, and in light of this argument, which I'm very much in favor of, as you might notice, I think that we should also be much more transparent in the classroom. And this also means that we should take concrete steps in the long-term future, for example, to think about the universities not as neutral sites and social institutions, but as active political actors, not only in the times of crisis, but also in the, let's say, normal state. And by this, I basically mean that when we are in the classrooms, we should be very transparent and very explicit about, for example, how we filter our literature, how we teach, how we disseminate the knowledge, how we communicate the knowledge, because these are all of these processes are value-laden. So we cannot do this in a politically neutral ways. So, and yes, so maybe this, I guess my lack of experience allows me to be a bit naive and idealistic, and therefore I like to think about this maybe visionary and speculative ideas. And I think that maybe these times of crisis in the past year and also in the past decade should somehow should tell us or show us or teach us or tell us something about how we need to structure our universities for the long-term future. And I would also like to share something from my personal experience, I would say. So I'm a student, but I haven't been involved in the student movement at my faculty, but I did some research at the Faculty of Philosophy, University of Novi Sad, with the students there who were active in the plenums and the student movement. And it was very interesting to me that although all of them are very political and they are aware that they are doing politics, and even though they have this anti-political stance and so on and so forth, it was very interesting to me that they were not able to form their opinions in specific ideological registers. And of course, students there come from different generations, so some of them were more aware of the ideologies that are in the background of their views, and others who are younger, Gen Z generation, they really didn't think about their actions in these ideological registers. And to me, that was a very interesting indicator that maybe the academia as a whole is not maybe offering, or the universities as the actors are not maybe offering the knowledge that is relevant for social change, let's say, or for resisting the autocratic regimes. So this is maybe some of you will take this as a controversial stance, but I think that we should think about the ways of how to structure universities, how to structure our curriculum, how to structure our teaching, and what we should do in the classroom as socially engaged scholars in order to educate the future generation of students who will be more able to resist the autocratic regimes, not only in the times of crisis, but when they start to appear as a real threat. So I would like to end with this, and yeah.
Okay, very good. Yes, thank you very much for your inputs. I think that it is extremely important for us to hear these reports and testimonies and to give everyone within the Circle U Alliance the chance to come to terms with what I think is very obviously a bold attack on academic freedom, on institutional autonomy, and also on civic rights, of course. I will be brief because I think it's most of the time today should be spent on local reports and the discussion with the audience about the status quo and what can be done within the alliance and beyond to raise awareness and to show solidarity in the whole sense of the term. I would nonetheless like to raise two questions. My first point is rather obvious. In preparation for this event, I made some inquiries about the state of academic freedom worldwide. There are various data sets that assess academic freedom and they vary methodologically. All data sets show, however, that developments have recently been deteriorating in various regions of the globe. We've heard about the crackdown on US universities by the Trump government, but we do not need to look across the Atlantic. We can look here, or also the state of academic freedom in the EU. Hungary is the most obvious candidate, but it's not the only one. Now, I also looked at the data set on Germany. While the index for Germany is relatively decent compared to other countries, an additional study I found revealed an interesting thing. In a questionnaire on academic freedom, there was a striking difference between the assessments of university leaderships and non-academic citizens. While university leaders in Germany are relatively confident in their ability to act independently from government influence or economic restraints, this positive assessment was not shared by non-academics. These assess the danger of undue influence on academia to be quite high. I do not want to speculate on the reasons for this divergence in Germany here. It's not important. Instead, I would like to hint to the general importance of the connection between academia and society in general, and you've hinted to this. The importance mainly also of discussing the state of academic freedom with people outside of academia. Well, you, Professor Popovic, have alluded to the fact that there is, of course, a lack of free media here in Serbia, and so it's difficult to start certain kinds of discussions. I was still wondering if there are things that others can learn from your experience. It has been striking to me to see the various ways in which you, the students, professors, and administrators here in Belgrade and beyond, have made your concerns visible, in the ways in which you have stood up and sought to connect general democratic and societal issues and the struggle for academic freedom and self-governance. So my question is, has the current situation changed your perspective on academia's role in society and vice versa? And are there any experience and ideas you can share with others that may now or in the future be confronted with assaults on academic freedom? And my second point stems from an observation that we also discussed with colleagues from the history department yesterday. As a historian, I know that there are, of course, always local dynamics to every struggle, and that there are also certain historical legacies that shape conflicts in very specific ways. Nonetheless, I just read a newspaper article about protest movements in Madagascar, Indonesia, Algeria, and other places on the globe where young people from Generation Z are protesting against what they perceive of as extreme injustice born out of rising economic and social inequality, lack of democratic accountability and representation, and certainly also some kind of kleptocracy and corruption by the mostly older elites. These movements connect via the internet, using social media, using this pirate flag, and they demand change. There are obvious connections between the struggles that are taking place at the moment, the flag, for instance, or the fact that the protests are in very large proportion carried out by young people born between the end of the 1990s and 2012, so to speak. And this is obviously a generation that I must say, in a very admiring way, is far more capable of stating their boundaries and saying no to things they don't want to accept, and more so than previous generation, I fear. But I'm still wondering, both as a citizen and as an historian, are there further connections between these struggles that are currently taking place all over the globe? And this is a question I would like to discuss with you and the audience.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'd like to say how humbled I am to be in the company of such courageous Serbian academics. I realize I have the luxury of operating in a relatively more stable place where academic freedoms are better protected. Maybe to spark the discussion, I wanted to share a personal experience which echoes in several different ways what has been said. And it relates to my Circle U course. I have just launched a course on behavioral science and public policy. And it was initially my intention to invite as a guest in this course, a guest lecturer, a colleague from Israel, who is a renowned scholar in the field, would have been happy to come, and with whom I have been in academic conversation for years. It was the idea, and then there came a point when I paused. There was the situation in Gaza that was only worsening. And also, I had in the interim become the Vice Dean for External Relations at the law school in Louvain. And so, as Ivanka said, what I was going to do as an academic was going to look like it was the law faculty's doing. And I I am personally not in favor of boycotts because I value individual academic freedom. But I also understand that other colleagues who are equally reasonable, thoughtful, and full of other qualities may have a different opinion on this. And in the country where I live and teach, there have been student protests when Israeli scholars were invited on a panel or on a course. There have been boycott of Israeli musicians, conductors at a concert venue. So this was the context. And so I paused and thought I could not go ahead with the invitation, at least not without sharing with my colleagues and discussing it. And so I did. And I realized that their thinking was in part very different from mine. And that one colleague said, well, I looked him up, the Israeli colleague I was about to invite, and it looks like he has not signed this petition against the Netanyahu government that other academics have signed. And so her personal opinion was that it would not be okay to invite him. Now that gave me pause, because it was a little bit distressing to me to consider that we may decide to invite what is okay in terms of academic invitation, depending on which particular form the academic's opposition to the government takes. Now, as has also been said, people have lives, people have families, they have a context. This colleague was only demonstrating against the government, and he had not signed this particular petition. So I felt very uncomfortable. I discussed it with him. I explained I wasn't able to guarantee the peaceful welcome I would have liked to offer, and that maybe it would be a good idea to postpone and invite him hopefully on the next edition of the course. So that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you very much for this multifaceted ways, and you raised so many important points. I find it excellent that how we opened up the field. I'm a little bit modifying our plan because the time we are a little bit longer than we initially should be. That should not be on the cost of skipping the questions coming from the room or from the chat. So we now take the possible questions, comment, and then return back and have the final round on the panel. For those questioning or commenting, please be concise. Not too long, but I think I've seen 1, 2, 3, 4. And maybe, Milos, if there's someone from the chat, we can then also take it. Ivan.
So thank you so much for these very great introductions and for the braveness of our Serbian colleagues. And I was deeply moved by listening to your reflections about also from the perspectives that you are coming from now about the balance between political activism and academic work, as you framed it, Professor Popovic. And what I was thinking is that, and I also really was intrigued by the way you framed it also in terms of crisis management or even perhaps crisis preparedness. And that brought my thoughts to Circle U, of course, since that's my responsibility, and also to education and the field of education, because what we are trying in Circle U is to create an open campus. And what do we understand by open campus? What mainly it is open educational formats or offerings. But I think it should also be open in a different sense, in a way that we open up for kind of dialogues, even the unpleasant dialogues, and also invite our students to take part in these dialogues. And that brings me to also my reflections from a Norwegian point of view, because I still, even if this crisis that you're experiencing here in Serbia right now is deeply serious, it is not that much awareness in Norway in the public space in general, and even not at the university and among students. And I was wondering if also, in addition to creating a management plan for academics, if we could think around crisis preparedness for students, and how to bring students into this dialogue. And because I think you also all mentioned it, that this dilemma that you have here, this crisis that you have here, is also a sleeping crisis all over the world. And how to create that awareness, how to use the open campus to create that awareness is my question. Yes.
Thank you all. I will continue in this direction. My name is Radina Vučetić. I'm from History Department at the Faculty of Philosophy, University of Belgrade. And first of all, I would like to thank you for coming here, for coming in Belgrade, for talking to us, for willingness to listen about our problems, especially about suppression and repression that we are facing in last several months. I also like to thank Ivanka, Nemanja, and Alexandra. I would like to begin with something that I felt in last 2 weeks. It's a feeling of sadness and kind of disappointment. At first I was at University of Padua, then 1 week after I went to University of Munich. In Munich we had a conference. There were colleagues from University of Oxford, Cambridge, from France, Italy, Norway, etc., etc. And almost no one did what's going on in Serbia. Or it was some vague remembrance that something bad, and there were some protests at some point, but nothing else, especially about the huge repression. So, while students in Serbia have been arrested and beaten, most of the European academic community remains silent, and it's largely because of media. They all said to me, well, we don't have any information. So, I would use this opportunity now to read a few parts from the joint resolution of Serbia on Serbia adopted by the European Parliament last week, which records various forms of violence. Whereas protests since late 2024 have been met with repression, including beatings, arbitrary arrests, tear gas, politically motivated detentions, deportations, and mass surveillance, whereas more than 1,028 arrests and at least 340 violent incidents have been recorded, including against high school students, some involving serious injuries, while independent observers stress that this figure is not exhaustive. Since August 2025, violence has further intensified, including police brutality, torture, and sexualized violence against students, threats by the Police Protection Service, politically motivated prosecutions by the Higher Prosecutor's Office, and smear campaigns by pro-government media. Whereas security agencies have unlawfully recorded and televised private conversation, which were used to accuse students and activists of preparing act against the constitutional order and the security of Serbia, while the elite military unit Cobras have been deployed in domestic clashes, even on one occasion firing live ammunition. whereas pro-government mobs and prior convicts have been shielded by police during violent counter-demonstration, while opposition figures, students, and members of parliaments have been beaten and abducted by plainclothes officers. It is just one part of this joint joint wishful thinking, a resolution by European Parliament. So my question now is, so what we already heard and from you and from Nemanja, what can we do to make the suppression of academic freedoms and the ongoing repression that may further intensify more visible? So I think that we should act as European academic community. We are part of that European academic community. So I just think that we as scholars and educators have to make these things visible and not happening again, you know, in Serbia or in Hungary or across the globe. So thank you for your attention and for your solidarity.
Well, thanks for the opportunity and thanks for the 5 great speeches and the 2 statements. Daniel Boxler at the University of Belgrade and Central European University. Nemanja will now tell me, that I'm playing the devil's advocate, but it's not. I think we should always, when we are critical, also be self-critical and reflect on what we do. And I really enjoyed the statement of our colleague from Louvain, because it pointed us to a dilemma which we haven't discussed otherwise. We were theorizing academic freedoms primarily as the civil right of academics as opposed to the dominant state, which is very important, or the dominant government. But what are the rights and freedoms within the academic community? If we speak of minority rights, it's not only the protection of minority rights against the government, but also the minority rights within our community. And so you very rightly pointed to that dilemma which we have, if the university is subject to a pro-Palestinian movement, what is then the right of a Israeli or even maybe a pro-Israeli student or scholar to also issue his expertise or her opinion? Or if we would translate the question, I would enjoy if we would reflect a little bit more on that. If you would translate the question to the Serbian context, where you have very rightly presented yourself as the minority who protects their rights from the state and being victimized. But how do we relate to internal dissent within the context of this student movement? Is there also a right in the context of a student blockage of the university, of students who disagree with the political statements of this movement or who are academically interested, to break the blockage and to study? And is there a right of colleagues to teach in a period when the dominant view of the university is that we go on strike? Thanks a lot.
So, thank you for this conversation. Nemanja Radonjić, Assistant Professor at the Department of History, Faculty of Philosophy. It's really good to open up such a number of topics. I'll be brief. The title is Academic Freedom Under Pressure, and Professor Popovic has hinted at one type of pressure that is exerted upon the whole of academia, and especially the professors. This is the financial pressure. So I had that misfortune to be the part of the Financial Commission at these times, so we've wrestled with many issues. One of the issues that Professor Popovic has mentioned is this Uredba 35.5 and the science and teaching relation. There is this, and I've discussed this with colleagues from Berlin within the Circle U Alliance, what is the actually European context in which we could raise this question of financing the University of Belgrade, because this actually precedes the fall of the canopy and the protest. This is the financial pressure to the autonomy of the Belgrade University and all the other universities. I'll also underline the University of Novi Pazar, which is also under a great financial pressure. This is, I feel it, part of an ongoing war against the university and against the academic freedom, because I'll just use this example to underline the amount of pressure that is felt. Professors have lost 4 or 5 paychecks, and these paychecks have not been reimbursed, and this has been used as a in a sense, racket and hostage situation where the government is, I would say, an irrational factor, where you cannot count on the government and the regime, actually, of Alexander Vučić as someone you can actually even negotiate with. So my question would be, what would be the context of this European University Alliance, except from raising awareness? How can we actually count on our allies in that sense, and can we raise awareness about this, because this, I feel, is also an important issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from the audience? Maybe we can add it, and then we will have the final round here on the panel. Okay, how can students be invited into the political issues, dilemma of ivory tower or revolutionary of academics? Where are the common grounds of academia? So the students' perspective, and how should we ally with them, or should we try to find common ground? I think this is the question. As announced, I mean, we opened up the field, and we've seen how many issues are involved. It's a Serbian topic, but it's just not just a Serbian topic. And we have seen how dramatic, and also by the inputs from the audience, how dramatic it currently is in Serbia, and how much indifference exists within the European audiences, which is also a little bit highly problematic. I mean, there were a couple of issues that were raised. You could take just one or two. We have the last 10 minutes, so don't be too late. Maybe we can take the same order as we had your inputs.
So thank you for the inputs from the audience. I think it's very difficult to respond in 3 minutes and in one panel session, but maybe this could be the beginning of a series that could be quite nice, I think, and useful for many. The issue is multi-layered, and context is really the key that we have to look at, because we have to say that there were very serious attacks on university autonomy and academic freedom in Serbia before these events of the past year. And the academic community did not unite in some kind of a united effort to stop what was going on. And maybe I'm being too harsh when I say, but I think even though we expect many things of the academic community and see it in maybe a better light than it is just more or less proportionally a presentation of society in small. It's a model system of society where you will have people going one way, the other, and of course you will have the inert majority that's waiting to see what will happen. I mean, this is life. We cannot be too critical. It just means that when you have a really divisive or a really key issue happening that everyone is affected by, then you get the response. And this was the key, actually, input of the students. The students were the drivers of the change, and the academic community followed. Whether this is the right order can be discussed also, because somehow I would have perceived it to be the other way around. But at any rate, first of all, in order for any of these things to function, we have to have engaged citizens, whether they are students, academic community, or any other part of society. And I think as universities, we need to strive and try to activate our citizens to be engaged in politics, whether from something that's happening in their local community or at a higher level. And if anything good has come out of these protests in Serbia, is that the students and other actors in these events of the past year, somehow a large part of the population has been activated, somehow enticed to at least state an opinion. And maybe this is what we should start by. Of course, the individual sacrifices that will come, and let's say the individuals that will be affected through the acts of government in reprisal, this is also the numbers show very clearly that in Serbia the number of people being affected existentially is on the rise. And unfortunately, I think there will be more and more of this. And this is something that does not transfer to other situations in Europe. And I think we are trying to have a European debate here. But as long as universities can be drivers of open conversations and debate, I think we're on the right track. And then each country or each region will get the context it needs to get. And I think for this panel, if this is a conclusion, that would be quite sufficient. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to be brief as well. I have 2 points. Maybe first to echo what Ivanka has said. Although I have to say that fight for academic freedom and student protests, I think, are not the same thing. Student protest has its beginning, it is going to have end, it has very specific demands, it will end, in a way it will end, regime change not. And as you rightfully pointed out, academic freedoms are under attack in democracies as well. Nobody likes to be criticized, nobody likes to be provoked. So I think this battle started before and will continue after the protest. So although there are some points of connection, I think these are paths that go maybe parallel rather than together. Maybe they're going together at some point, and I think it's something that we have to have in mind, that this is a kind of, especially in a global context, that this is a fight that will go on regardless of what is the end result of the student protest here or anywhere else. And the second point, because we have a leadership of Circle U here, and part of my identity also as being a part of the alliance from the beginning, is actually maybe the situation in Serbia can be something that can trigger our alliance to be different from others. And it can start with Serbia, but it doesn't have to end with Serbia. And I would really like, for example, in Democracy Hub, we discuss 2 possibilities. For example, I would really like for Circle U Alliance to have something as a student in danger program. We have students who are not able to come back in Serbia because they're indicted against against constitutional order. We have students who are in prison here. It would be very nice once they're out of the prison to spend the semester in Oslo or Vienna. And that can also happen for other student protests who are in Europe or not in Europe, but maybe Serbia can be some kind of catalyst of this kind of program. We have seen similar with Ukraine and others, and I would like for our alliance to be maybe the front runner in this. And the second point, and you raised my colleagues from Faculty of Philosophy, it would be very nice to have a solidarity fund of Circle U Alliance that can cover the immediate, like very basic urgent needs of people who are part of the alliance, but then again, it can go beyond. And I know that we are in the neoliberal academia, there are very problems, but I still think that as we come together as alliance, there should be some solidarity fund, and when there is a crisis, we as alliance can act. And I think it would be beneficial not only for Serbia, but I think it would be beneficial for alliance to create this cohesiveness that we so much talk about. Thank you so much.
I will talk from the perspective of a student and also from the perspective of how we should think about to be prepared for the risk as academic workers within the universities, and also about the involvement of students. So I think that maybe we should also think of in more long-term way and include the students in the academic work and provide them with the space to form their own opinions, which is unburdened by the opinion of their authorities. And I think that knowledge should be disseminated not in this ex cathedra style, which we often have at our faculties, but through dialogue. And I think that students, and they showed us this in the past year, have very much to offer experiential knowledge, generational knowledge, which academic elites are maybe not always aware of. So I think that we should be much more revolutionary in that respect and to think in a more visionary way of how to restructure our universities and these very rigid and conservative structures in order to be prepared for the future risks and attacks on academic freedom and also on democracy and European values as well. So I think that we should continue this conversation even after this crisis will hopefully eventually end, and then to be more open and more visionary with respect to how to involve the students, how to restructure our university academic norms, and so on and so forth. So this is just a very brief conclusion.
Maybe a quick word to echo your proposal. I had jotted down the same thing of I think a Circle U Solidarity Fund is something to work on. I think it's much needed and would be very welcome. Maybe one thing I wanted to say, borrowing here from Timothy Snyder in a different context. Academic freedom, like other forms of freedom, you can think of it in a negative or in a positive way. It's freedom from interference of governments, and it's also freedom to revolutionize how we teach in the classroom, how we raise awareness, how we put students in dialogue. So, yes, just wanted to share that.
Actually, with regard to what you two said, I think this is a great idea, and I think solidarity sometimes has the image of being one directional, but I think if we have students from Serbia, for example, at Humboldt University, our students are going to learn. We are going to learn. I think this is going to be a great program of actually connecting students across Europe and connecting experiences, and I think this is relating to what you said and what actually everyone on the podium said, what is needed at this moment. So I think we should really progress to think along these lines in the future.
Thank you very much. I made a lot of notes, but there's no time to start my lecture now. But I have the privilege not just to finish this open conversation. I will be brief, don't be scared. I think maybe one issue is that I would take out of the discussion, maybe just going a step back. I remember, since I'm dealing with history a little bit about post-1989, first was the discussion about civil society. So there should be plurality, civil society. The next discussion was on media, freedom of media, and so on. And the next step was rule of law, when the law and the legal systems were coming under pressure. And nothing was about academic freedom until now, and now academic freedom is on the agenda. So if we talk about democracy, it seems that all of these pillars are involved. And democracy rests on these pillars. And it seems that the pillar that we did not see so much endangered, or at least we were not discussing so much, academia, is now also shaky. And I think this is not, if it's shaky in Serbia, that we could be somehow disinterested, and it's a problem for Serbia. I don't care, but I think we should not. And I think the discussions that is creeping a little bit out of and popping up on different places. So maybe the point 2, and then there's a point 3 as a finisher. I think what you said, Radina, is this kind of indifference and this kind of not getting involved. And this is a little bit, maybe Circle U can be a space where this, I think if you're not involved, if you're not emotionally touched by something, you don't care. And and I think if we have platforms like this to get 9 university organizations and institutions working together, that we should be involved, and it should be an asset. How much it will be of help, we can discuss. And I think we put the open conversation here not as a final discussion of the workshop, it was the starting of the workshop. So with the next 2 days, we take what has been said here on the panel into the discussion, and maybe there will be some outcome. Maybe, no, there will be 4. What you mentioned is, I was always, I mean, some of the colleagues said you had ups and downs, sometimes euphoric, then depressed, ups and downs. And I think what my experience was that the ups were also only with watching the students. I mean, when you see this energy of these young people, then you have this kind. So I believe that the students are those who are probably more optimistic than the old professors usually are. And maybe this is an indifferent hope. The battle has to be fought, and all of us are, if we want or not, involved in the battle. I think the battle here is a little bit starting with November 1st, which is also officially the starting of the next semester. I hope we all will be stay in touch. Thank you for the panelists, for your inputs, to the audience here in the room for getting involved, and also to the audience in the live stream. Thank you very much, and I think we almost finished in time.